There is a power at work in the universe that does not announce itself. It does not strive, compete, or demand attention. It does not raise its voice, yet it governs all things. This power moves quietly beneath the surface of life, shaping outcomes, restoring order, and revealing truth to those who are willing to listen beyond sound. This is the silent power. Most people are conditioned to believe that power must be loud, forceful, and visible. We are taught that change comes through struggle, argument, and relentless effort. Yet the deepest transformations in human life do not begin in noise. They begin in stillness. They begin in a moment when the restless mind becomes quiet, and something greater than personal thought is allowed to take the lead. The silent power is not something we create, it is something we recognize. It has always been present, patiently waiting beneath the layers of fear, effort, and mental resistance. When we stop trying to control life through constant thinking and emotional reaction, this power naturally reveals itself. It does not need permission to work, but it does require our willingness to be still. In silence, the mind loosens its grip on fear. In silence, the endless inner arguments lose their authority. What remains is a gentle awareness that knows without reasoning, guides without words, and acts without strain. This awareness is not personal, it is universal. It does not belong to one individual, yet it expresses itself uniquely through each life. Many seek answers through endless questioning, yet the silent power responds only when questioning ceases. It speaks in intuition, in clarity, in peace that has no logical explanation. When the mind steps aside, truth steps forward. When effort rests, intelligence moves. This is why silence is not emptiness. It is fullness waiting to be acknowledged. The silent power does not fight problems, it dissolves them. It does not oppose darkness, it reveals light. When we rest in inner stillness, confusion begins to fade, not because we solved it, but because we rose above the level where it existed. The outer situation may look the same for a moment, but inwardly something has shifted, and that shift eventually reshapes the visible world. Living from the silent power changes how we respond to life. We no longer react from fear or urgency. Decisions arise naturally. Words become fewer but more effective. Actions become simple yet powerful. Life begins to flow instead of resist. What once required effort now unfolds with ease. This power asks for no recognition. It does not need to be defended or explained. It simply works. When we learn to pause, to listen inwardly, and to trust the quiet guidance within, we discover that the greatest strength we will ever know is not found in force but in stillness. The silent power has always been present. The moment we stop striving to reach it, we realize it has already reached us. True power operates beyond noise and outward force, because what is loud is often compensating for what is uncertain. Noise seeks attention, validation, and resistance, while real power has no need to announce itself. It is self-sustaining, self-evident, and complete within itself. When power depends on outward display, it must constantly prove its existence. When power is real, it simply functions. The universe itself offers this lesson continuously. The most essential processes of life occur silently: growth, healing, intelligence, order. No sound accompanies the unfolding of a seed beneath the soil, yet it breaks through concrete. No announcement is made when understanding dawns in the mind, yet confusion dissolves instantly. This reveals that effectiveness is not proportional to volume. Outward force relies on pressure, control, and reaction. It pushes against circumstances in the hope of shaping outcomes. True power, however, does not push, it governs. It does not argue with conditions, it supersedes them. When force is used, there is always resistance, because force acknowledges an opposing power. Silent power recognizes none. It operates from a level where opposition does not exist. This is why force exhausts, but inner authority sustains. One drains energy, the other releases it. Noise is often a product of fear. The mind becomes loud when it believes something is missing or threatened. In that state, action is reactive, scattered, and unstable. Silent power emerges when fear subsides and awareness becomes centered. From this inner stability, decisions arise without urgency, and movement happens without strain. Nothing is rushed because nothing is being chased. There is an understanding that what is real does not need to be forced into existence. History and human experience repeatedly show that the most influential individuals were not those who shouted the loudest, but those who stood firmly in inner certainty. Their presence alone shifted environments. This kind of influence does not come from persuasion or dominance, it comes from alignment with a deeper order. Others sense it intuitively, because truth resonates without explanation. Words may follow, but they are secondary to the state from which they emerge. When one learns to trust this silent dimension of power, life begins to reorganize itself. Effort gives way to clarity. Struggle softens into precision. Action becomes minimal yet effective. The individual no longer tries to control outcomes, but allows intelligence to express itself through natural means. Power then is no longer something to be sought, defended, or displayed. It is something quietly lived, moment by moment, without noise, without force, without the need to convince anyone of its reality. Stillness is the gateway to spiritual authority because authority is not produced by effort but revealed through alignment. When the mind is constantly active, it fragments attention and weakens perception. Thoughts pull awareness in multiple directions, each demanding action, reaction, or judgment. In this scattered state, even sincere intentions lack depth because they are filtered through noise. Stillness gathers awareness back into its source. It is not the absence of thought but the settling of unnecessary movement, allowing consciousness to become clear, focused, and receptive. Spiritual authority does not come from knowledge accumulation or verbal expression. It arises from inner stability. A still mind is not passive, it is alert without tension. In that alertness, truth is recognized rather than reasoned out. This recognition carries a natural authority because it is rooted in direct awareness, not borrowed ideas. When awareness is still, it perceives reality as it is, not as fear, memory, or desire distort it. From this perception, actions carry weight and words carry impact without force. Stillness removes the need to dominate situations or convince others. Authority that comes from effort must constantly assert itself to survive. Authority that comes from stillness simply stands. It is felt before it is understood. Others respond to it instinctively because it operates at a level deeper than logic. This is why a calm presence can settle chaos more effectively than argument, and why quiet confidence can influence outcomes without resistance. The ego resists stillness because stillness dissolves false control. The mind believes it must constantly manage life to remain safe. In reality, this constant management creates strain and confusion. Stillness restores trust in a higher intelligence that already knows how to order life. When one rests in this trust, authority shifts from personal will to inner guidance. Decisions no longer come from pressure but from clarity. Timing becomes precise. Action becomes effortless. Spiritual authority expressed through stillness does not withdraw from the world. It engages life from a higher position. Instead of reacting to appearances, it responds to truth. Instead of being driven by urgency, it moves with purpose. This authority does not seek recognition, yet it is recognized. It does not seek permission, yet it opens doors. Its strength lies in its rootedness, not in visibility. As stillness deepens, dependence on external validation fades. Approval, opposition, success, and failure lose their power to disturb inner balance. From this balance, one speaks and acts with authenticity. There is no need to exaggerate, defend, or explain excessively. The authority present in stillness communicates itself through simplicity, consistency, and peace, influencing life quietly yet decisively. Inner awareness precedes visible transformation because change is never initiated at the surface of life. What appears outwardly as a sudden shift is always the result of an unseen adjustment within consciousness. The outer world reflects states of awareness, not effort or desire alone. When awareness remains unchanged, repeated actions only recycle the same outcomes. True transformation begins the moment perception shifts, even if no external evidence is immediately visible. Most people attempt to alter circumstances without examining the inner framework from which those circumstances arise. They focus on behavior, environment, or other people, believing change will come through correction or control. Yet without inner awareness, these efforts remain temporary. Awareness determines interpretation, and interpretation determines response. When awareness is limited, responses are reactive and predictable. When awareness expands, responses become intelligent and creative, producing different results without strain. Inner awareness is the capacity to observe thought, emotion, and belief without being ruled by them. In this observing state, unconscious patterns lose their authority. Fear is seen rather than obeyed. Desire is understood rather than chased. This shift alone begins transformation, because what is seen clearly can no longer operate in secrecy. The moment awareness touches a limiting belief, its power weakens and new possibilities emerge naturally. Visible change often lags behind inner realization because consciousness must first stabilize at a new level. Just as a seed requires time to take root before breaking the surface, awareness must become established before life reorganizes itself. During this period, patience is essential. Doubt arises when the outer world appears unchanged, but doubt itself is merely the echo of old awareness seeking relevance. Remaining faithful to inner clarity allows transformation to mature without interference. When awareness changes, perception changes. Situations once seen as obstacles are recognized as opportunities for alignment. Problems lose their emotional charge, revealing practical solutions that were previously invisible. This is not positive thinking or denial, it is accurate seeing. With accurate seeing, action becomes effective. Effort decreases because resistance has been removed at its source. Transformation sustained by inner awareness does not depend on constant maintenance. It is not fragile because it is rooted in understanding rather than willpower. Once awareness has shifted, the individual naturally chooses differently, speaks differently, and responds differently without conscious effort. Life follows this new pattern automatically. Visible transformation then appears not as a struggle overcome but as a natural outcome of inner alignment. Circumstances adjust to match the new state of consciousness. Relationships change, opportunities appear, and direction becomes clear. What seemed like external change is revealed to be the outer expression of an inner awakening that quietly took place first. Silence aligns the mind with divine intelligence because the mind, when active and noisy, operates largely from memory, fear, and conditioned patterns. Thought repeats what it already knows, projecting the past into the present. In this state the mind is busy but not wise. Silence interrupts this cycle. When mental noise subsides, space is created for a higher order of intelligence to be perceived. This intelligence is not constructed by thought, it is revealed when thought becomes still. Divine intelligence does not compete with the human mind, it waits for cooperation. Constant thinking leaves no room for guidance beyond personal reasoning. Silence, however, softens the boundaries of the self. In that openness, awareness becomes receptive rather than assertive. Instead of trying to figure life out, one begins to sense direction intuitively. Insight arises without effort, and understanding appears without analysis. This is alignment not because the mind has achieved something, but because it has stopped interfering. In silence, the mind returns to its natural function as an instrument rather than a master. Thought becomes responsive instead of dominant. It receives clarity and then translates it into practical form. This is why ideas that emerge from silence often carry simplicity and precision. They feel complete rather than forced. There is no mental strain attached to them because they do not originate from anxiety or desire, but from a deeper knowing. Noise fragments attention. Each thought pulls awareness toward a different concern, weakening focus and increasing confusion. Silence gathers attention into unity. In this unified state, perception sharpens. One begins to notice subtle cues, inner promptings, and quiet assurances that were previously drowned out. These are not emotional impulses but calm recognitions. They carry a sense of rightness that does not require justification. Alignment through silence also dissolves inner conflict. Much of human struggle comes from opposing thoughts battling for control. Silence ends the argument by rising above it. When the mind is no longer divided, energy flows freely. Action taken from this state feels timely and appropriate. There is no second guessing because clarity replaces doubt. Even challenges are met with composure, as the response arises from intelligence rather than reaction. This alignment does not remove individuality, it refines it. The personality becomes a clear channel instead of a distorted lens. One's unique abilities are expressed more effectively because they are guided by wisdom rather than ego. Creativity deepens. Communication becomes meaningful. Presence itself begins to influence situations without deliberate effort. As silence becomes familiar, trust replaces control. The need to constantly plan, predict, and defend diminishes. Life is approached with attentiveness rather than tension. Guidance is recognized in the moment it is needed, not rehearsed in advance. The mind learns to listen before it acts, and in that listening, it aligns naturally with an intelligence that orders life with balance, harmony, and quiet precision. Effort gives way to surrender in higher consciousness because effort belongs to the level of separation, where life is perceived as something to be managed, fixed, or forced into alignment. At this level, the individual assumes personal responsibility for outcomes, believing that control is necessary for survival and success. This belief creates tension, because the weight of life is carried by limited human strength. Higher consciousness reveals that this strain is unnecessary, not because action is wrong, but because action does not originate from personal struggle. Surrender is often misunderstood as passivity or resignation, but in higher consciousness it is neither. It is the release of false control, not the abandonment of intelligence. When surrender occurs, the individual stops resisting the natural flow of life. Instead of imposing will, one becomes attentive to inner guidance. Action still happens, but it arises from clarity rather than pressure. This shift transforms effort into ease and struggle into precision. Effort is driven by fear of lack, fear of delay, or fear of failure. It rushes, pushes, and overcompensates. Surrender dissolves these fears by restoring trust in a greater order already at work. In this trust, urgency fades. There is no need to force results, because results are understood to be outcomes of alignment rather than exertion. What must be done becomes obvious, and what is unnecessary falls away naturally. Higher consciousness recognizes that life is intelligent and self-regulating. When the mind stops interfering with constant planning and worry, this intelligence expresses itself more freely. Solutions appear without being hunted. Opportunities align without manipulation. Even challenges serve a purpose, revealing areas where resistance can be released. Surrender allows these revelations to occur without conflict. As effort subsides, energy is conserved rather than consumed. Much of human fatigue comes not from action itself, but from mental resistance to what is. Surrender removes this resistance, allowing action to flow smoothly. One may still work diligently, but without inner friction. The same task requires less energy because it is no longer accompanied by anxiety or self-doubt. In surrender, the sense of a separate door begins to soften. Actions feel as though they are happening through the individual rather than being generated by personal will alone. This does not diminish responsibility, it refines it. Responsibility shifts from controlling outcomes to remaining aligned with truth in each moment. Success and failure lose their emotional extremes because identity is no longer attached to results. Higher consciousness lives from this surrendered state naturally. Decisions are made without hesitation, not because every outcome is known, but because trust replaces fear. Life becomes a cooperation rather than a battle. Effort is no longer the source of movement, alignment is. What once required force now unfolds with quiet certainty, guided by an intelligence that works most effectively when it is allowed rather than resisted. Life changes naturally when truth is realized inwardly, because truth is not an idea to be applied but a reality to be recognized. As long as truth remains intellectual, life continues according to old patterns. Thought may agree with truth, repeat it, or even defend it, yet nothing fundamentally shifts. Change begins the moment truth is inwardly realized, when it moves from concept to consciousness. At that point it no longer requires effort to maintain, because it becomes the lens through which life is experienced. Inward realization alters perception at its root. What once appeared threatening loses its power. What once seemed lacking is seen differently. This is not denial of circumstances, but a deeper understanding of their nature. When perception changes, reaction changes. When reaction changes, behavior changes. Life then responds to this new state of being without force or manipulation. External adjustment follows internal clarity as a natural consequence. Truth realized inwardly dissolves inner conflict. Much struggle comes from holding opposing beliefs simultaneously, wanting peace while expecting turmoil, seeking abundance while fearing loss. When truth is realized, contradiction collapses. The mind becomes unified. From this unity, choices are simple and direct. There is no inner debate draining energy. Action flows from understanding rather than compulsion. Natural change does not require constant vigilance. When behavior is shaped by willpower, it must be monitored and enforced. When behavior is shaped by realization, it sustains itself. One does not need to remind oneself to trust when trust has been seen as true. One does not need to force compassion when separation has been recognized as false. Truth, once realized, expresses itself effortlessly. This inward shift also changes the relationship with time. Impatience fades because realization carries completeness. There is no sense of waiting to become whole. The present moment is sufficient. From this sufficiency, anxiety about the future loosens its grip. Decisions are made with calm assurance, even when outcomes are uncertain, because truth provides stability beyond circumstance. Life responds to inward realization through subtle yet consistent changes. Relationships adjust sometimes without explanation. Opportunities appear in ways that feel timely rather than planned. Obstacles lose their emotional charge and become navigational signals instead of threats. These changes may seem coincidental, but they are expressions of alignment between inner understanding and outer experience. When truth is realized inwardly, life does not need to be fixed, it reorganizes itself. The individual no longer strives to become different but allows truth to live through them. In this allowance, transformation is not dramatic or forced, it is quiet, steady, and undeniable. What changes is not only what happens, but how life is lived, experienced, and understood from the inside out. The silent power reveals that the deepest changes in life do not begin with effort, noise, or outward struggle. They begin within, in the quiet recognition of truth that does not demand expression but naturally transforms everything it touches. When the mind becomes still, awareness clears, and a higher intelligence is allowed to guide thought, action, and direction. From this inner alignment, authority arises without force, clarity replaces confusion, and surrender replaces strain. As inner awareness deepens, life responds without being pushed. Circumstances shift, not because they are fought, but because the consciousness engaging them has changed. What once required constant effort unfolds with ease. The individual no longer seeks power but discovers that power has always been present, working silently beneath appearances. To live from this understanding is to move through life with quiet confidence, patience, and trust. Action becomes precise, words become fewer yet meaningful, and presence itself becomes influential. In embracing the silent power, one realizes that transformation is not achieved by becoming something new, but by resting in what has always been true.